Hello and welcome to the show today. Today, we're going to talk about a lot of really cool tech stuff that you should know, especially we're going to dive into post-quantum security. And with us today is the foremost expert on this, Paul Clayson. Now, Paul joined AgilePQ in 2017, bringing extensive experience in launching and growing early stage companies. He has launched 4 disruptive technology companies and served as CEO of 5 early stage companies in nanotech, automotive, graphene, carbon nanotube, PCB, microprocessor, and many other advanced technologies. Now, he has deep experience with company governance and boards and a broad global network of venture and PE firms. Paul currently serves in advisory and mentor roles with Stanford University, TomKat Center for Sustainable Energy, the North Carolina Joint School of Nano-Science, and the Nano-Engineering board, or JSNN, and Board of Advisors. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Nice to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on. And like I said before we got started, I'm like, I know so little to nothing about so many of these things, which always is an exciting interview for me because I actually get to learn a bunch of cool stuff that I don't know about. So I really appreciate you taking time for us.
Of course. Anytime, anytime.
So what are LOT devices and cryptography?
IoT devices are Internet of Things. These are very small devices. So think maybe a Nest thermostat on your wall that you control from your smartphone, or you can raise and lower your temperatures from your smartphone at any time. That has a very small processor in it. It's connected to the internet. It's a very small computing device. So those are called Internet of Things, or IoT. So these are starting to happen in all kinds of devices, like everything from your coffee maker to your lighting system to an oven to industrial activities, sensors all over manufacturing floors to measure vibration and weight and temperature and all kinds of things, to smart buildings where you can measure heat and listen to sounds, critical sounds, or those kinds of things. These devices are growing and proliferating throughout our world by the hundreds of millions each year.
Yeah, a lot of it is. I mean, it's almost all going to be run by voice command, it seems to be where we're going. So does that leave us vulnerable? Is there a lot of ways that people can hack this kind of stuff?
Well, I'll give you a statistic and you can probably decide from there. Experts have indicated that over 98% of all of these small IoT devices have no security on them at all.
So and the crazy thing is you're putting them all over your house.
Are we vulnerable? Heck yeah, we're vulnerable. And so then the next question becomes, well, what's somebody going to do if they figure out the temperature in my house?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, what do they do if they take control of my Nest?
Yeah. Well, that's not the problem. The problem is the unknowns that people are unaware of that can happen from these. So let's just say for a second that a nation state was able to hack your IoT device in the middle of, let's say, even a hot war. And they were able to shut off your furnace in your house through that IoT device and cause a lot of confusion and scare a lot of people. What if someone was able to take over that IoT device unknown to you and stitch it together with a few million other IoT devices and attack somebody to shut down their internet systems that they're operating with? Or what if somebody was able to take over that device and ride the data stream upstream into your smartphone, beyond that into critical data centers that you have as a consumer? Or what happens more often is into critical data centers with companies, and then they steal data out of those because they were able to ride the stream upstream. Those are the things that people should be worried about, because not only am I giving you what ifs, I'm giving you what ifs that I tore out of the headlines of the technology news. Those have happened and are happening every single day.
You know, the people in my circle are most secured with spying, intrusion, access, because a lot of this stuff has sensors, it has microphones, it has video. So how real of a threat is that? I mean, do we really see, I remember a movie back when where people were hacking all these computers and there was this one big screen and you're looking at all these people's private homes. I mean, is that really a risk that we face? And is that stuff already happening now?
It's already happening. All you got to do is go in and Google somebody who's hacked. You can do in particular a consumer device, somebody who's hacked a consumer device, and you'll come up with headlines that happen all the time. Here, a few months ago, there was one where someone went in through an automated IoT doorbell system that was placed not only at the doorbell, it was placed in the rooms of their kids, and some creepy bad actor had hacked into that and was talking to their two young girls, both of whom I believe were under 6 years old, in their room. That is one creepy scenario right there. So it is happening and does happen, but it doesn't have to. I mean, there are solutions to this, but yeah, those kinds of things are very real. On the industrial, on the commercial side, on the government side, it's even more critical for those systems because there are lots of trade secrets, everything from intellectual property to all kinds of other trade secrets and information that can be stolen off those devices.
So what do you see as most common? What are the most common things happening in the business world and in the consumer personal world that we really have got to look out for?
So in the business world, it really currently is the most immediate is either intellectual property theft that occurs by going in through those IoT devices and getting into the network system of the owners of those devices. The second would be that people are perpetrating these attacks where they will take over the devices, stitch them together with millions of other devices and attack someone else. That's called a distributed denial of service attack. Those are happening very regularly now through IoT devices because they're unsecured. A third would be that someone is taking over the device and sitting on it, waiting for the possibility of some future event where they could create a lot of confusion and disorder by accessing those devices, shutting them down, sending false information over them, and the like. All of that is unacceptable behavior, but and then certainly there are people riding the data stream up. A while back, there was a news story. I smiled. Somebody got into in Las Vegas, got into the gamblers' database record systems inside of a casino and stole a bunch of contact information and credit cards and personal information on all of these high rollers. They got in through the temperature sensor on a fish tank in the casino itself. So those are the most common things that are happening.
So what is data leakage?
What is data leakage?
Yeah, what is data leakage? Because I mean, I'm familiar with cyber attacks, but I've heard this term data leakage, and I don't think I really understand exactly what it is.
Well, data leakage is when you're collecting data and that information is stored somewhere or being collected somewhere, and the data is leaking out through some method. Now, maybe that method is a flaw in the software, but maybe it's the fact that somebody has been able to hack into the system and is bleeding information off from some sort of data file. In today's world, you've probably heard this before, but in the technology world, people will say that data is the gold standard today. It's what every company should take great care to preserve. And so if that data is going external in some way, it's a problem. Data leakage can also have reference to other kinds of things, such as maybe there's a memory system, or maybe there's a chip, or there's some sort of hardware flaw that is leaking memory out. So it may have no relevance to our topic as well, but all of those things can be part of it.
Okay. And I appreciate you giving me insight. Like, I got you here for a limited time. I got to get all the info I could try to figure out that I don't know. So let's talk about the home for a second. 90% plus of these devices are not protected. What do we do? I don't know anything about security. So what kind of protections can I take in my household to start to protect myself if all these devices are around me that people can hack?
Well, there's two answers to that. The first is make sure that on your router that you have, the gateway system that's go between the servers on the back end and your IoT devices within your house. Make sure that you have gone in, that you've set a unique username and a unique password. Now, those are very rudimentary security procedures, but and they don't keep everybody out, by the way. But if you leave the username and password on that router that it came with, just because it's easy, and most of them come with perhaps the username of admin and a password of admin, and bad actors know that, and so that's the first thing they try, is just common usernames and passwords. But if you put in a unique username and a unique password that is as secure as you can have it, that's at least a first step for consumers. In terms of securing your data in transit, that requires a very elaborate data in transit encryption system. If you buy an IoT device and it doesn't have that on it, then you do have vulnerability, and almost none of them have that at all. So currently it's hard, it would be hard for you to go back and get that added to your device. That's not something you could do. So from a standpoint of consumers, you should ask, you should make sure when you're buying a device, what kind of security does this have? Am I secure if I do this? Where are my vulnerabilities? They'll likely be told, well, you got a username and password, it's completely secure. That's incorrect, but you should ask that. The second thing that consumers ought to know is that the United States government is moving forward right now to pass a consumer protection law that would require a minimum level of security on every IoT device for consumer use or home use. That law has not passed across the United States yet. It has passed in Europe, by the way. It has passed in California, and a couple of other states that have undertaken their own consumer security protection acts. But it's being very slow to move forward, because as a consumer, you and I assume when we buy a device that that device is going to be secure, right?
Sure, yeah.
Why would they sell me something that's not secure? But that in fact is what's happening. So, so those are just questions that consumers can ask. In the future, if we're successful as a company, we'll change all that. We'll make sure that those kinds of devices have secured data in transit. They have usernames and passwords, authentication, authorization methods, all of these kinds of things that create layers of security that secure those devices out of the box.
Is there anything I can do in my house to secure to recognize a cyber attack, to recognize that I've been attacked?
So right now it's difficult. It's difficult for you to do. We're changing that as well, by the way. We created some visibility and threat detection tools, which we are now working with a couple of organizations to add that to a dashboard that you can pull up. Let's say you plug in your router, and you can now pull up a dashboard around that router, or pull up a dashboard from your ISP provider, the person providing your internet connection. You can pull up a dashboard, and on that dashboard, we'll have some tools that will show you any kind of threats that have or are taking place on those devices, so you can know when there are attacks taking places. There are rudimentary things that you can do now, and that is shut the device off just to reboot it and bring it back up. Sometimes that will kick out somebody who has a constant connection, and they would have to reestablish it. But it's not long-term solutions. Long-term, it's got to have more security going forward.
Yeah. So, and really that's applicable. I asked it for the household, but it's very applicable. It seems like with business as well. You know, you deal with post-quantum security is what it's called. So first of all, what is that?
So post-quantum, there's a coming wave of computers called quantum computers. They process data in a far different manner than your laptop or your smartphone or all of our current devices. Those devices all process it using binary code, ones and zeros written into computer programming, and that's how the programs are built. Quantum computers don't use binary code. They use qubits, quantum bits as their processing language. What that allows those computers to do, where your computer processes things in a linear manner, one function followed by the next, followed by the next, followed by the next. Quantum computers can process multiple streams of data, multiple commands and functions in parallel. So it can process massive amounts more of data than your current computer. It's kind of like having, comparing what we have now to a light switch. You have two positions, on or off. A quantum computer is more like having a dimmer switch. You can turn the dimmer switch up or the dimmer switch down, and there's this unlimited number of positions in between. And that quantum computer can do that. So what's projected to happen with the advent of those quantum computers when they come online in the next 5 years or so, is that they'll crunch through all of the data on a security system that would allow them to break the current encryption security on your smartphone and mine. And when that happens, all data is vulnerable. In fact, we know right now that there are nations around the world that are hacking into and downloading encrypted data from all over the world, from the US doing it to other people, other countries, and they're downloading that and putting it in storage so that when those quantum computers come online, they'll be able to break that encryption and go back and look and see what actually this critical, top secret, highly sensitive data is. So quantum computers will not replace your laptop or mine. We don't need that kind of computing power, but they will provide massive, new, incredible functions for the future, but they're going to create some challenges. So those quantum computers, we have to start planning for. We have to start putting in place IT network systems now that allow those systems to be secured going forward when quantum computers become a reality. So what we did was we created a security system that can work on the smallest of IoT devices, and it's post-quantum. It will survive in that quantum era. So when we talk about post-quantum security, that's what we're referencing.
So what makes your security different than what's out there now?
From a post-quantum standpoint?
Well, I mean, in general, from post-quantum standpoint, but then in general, is that really what differentiates you? What you guys do is that you're focusing on stuff that will work in the post-quantum world?
That's one part of it. But another part of it is on my smartphone and yours, it takes a large amount of data code or processing code to process an encrypted message and then to decrypt it on the back end. It takes 3,000 kilobytes. For those who know what a kilobyte is, it takes 3,000 kilobytes. When you're dealing with an IoT, a small device, those devices don't have enough processing power to process 3,000 kilobytes. In fact, their entire processing capacity is under 100 kilobytes. So we created a system that uses only, our algorithms use only 2.5 kilobytes total. And we also made it post-quantum because we cut so much out of the operating code that's on your smartphone for encryption security. We cut so much out of that code, we were able to increase the size of our keys. If you're going to encrypt a message, you have to put a key at the front and a key at the back. It's kind of like having a password at the front and a password at the back. You need it to send the message, somebody else needs that password to decode it at the end. Well, the size of those keys mean everything to the security of the system, how big those keys are. So if you've got a key that's two bits long, the number of combinations of that are very easy to figure out. If you've got a key that's 32 bits long, the combination of all of those 32 bits is a much bigger key space. Well, 32 bits is what's on your smartphone. Our key space is 288.
Wow.
I said bits, but I meant bytes. Ours is 288 bytes, where yours is 32 bytes in size. So we were able to create a vastly more secure key space, and post-quantum computers can't break that size of key space, even with their big processing power, and it can fit on the smallest IoT devices. And by doing that, we sped up the transaction. Our technology is 10 times faster than the encryption on your smartphone. It uses 80% less battery power. We created a system that allows all of these small little devices around the world to operate extraordinarily efficiently.
Yeah, and securely.
And securely. And we created a software development kit that allows people to take our technology and implement it very rapidly and get it on board these devices. So we've been able to create a very simple and elegant and out-of-the-box solution.
So can I do that now? Like, can I go get your solution and then use it around my house to take any of these?
No, it's not a developer's toolkit that you could use. It has to come from the manufacturer. It has to be built into their processing code that runs that device that's in your house.
Yeah, so they need to shape up, and that's what you guys are working on.
It's not an app. It's not an app, but yeah, we're appealing to those developers of those applications and developers of those devices, and quite frankly, that's also where the legislation coming through the U.S. Congress is focused as well.
So, on a business standpoint, how do we protect ourselves? Like, I mean, a casino's never even going to think about protecting the technology that's in their fish tank. You know, so like, what can we do now before these guys all shape up to try to have some level of protection on either a consumer or a business standpoint?
Yeah, well, from a business standpoint, there are several things. One, if you're deploying IoT devices on a system, a temperature sensor in a fish tank, that needs to be taken into consideration before you actually deploy the device. What you need to look at is, if I'm putting that onto the network, does that network exist on my normal corporate IT network? If it does, then you need to look at that and say, how do we protect ourselves? So some companies are creating segregated networks. So they'll have all of their IoT devices on one end-to-end network that is not hooked back into the corporate network. So even if somebody hacked the IoT device, they could only steal data that was being produced by all of the IoT devices. That's still a huge threat, but at least lessens some of the concern from getting into the corporate system. Another way is to get better authentication and authorization. If I'm sending a message from my Nest thermostat, I get on my app, I send a message that goes to the server. The server then notifies my Nest thermostat, I need to lower the temperature 2 degrees. And then that comes, the Nest thermostat sends a message back to the server that sends it back to your app and says, done. That application is done. Every time that connects, it requires an authentication and authorization. So when your app contacts the server, says, can I talk to you? Says, yep, I've authenticated who you are. You're now authorized to talk. Those authentication and authorization systems are critical. Part of those is usernames and passwords. So people, consumers and businesses do need to get accustomed to having much more secure usernames and passwords on their systems. Strong number of characters in the password, strong number of differentiation in those characters is all very critical. And then encryption is another layer. Encryption is something that has to be placed on that and developed and put into the applications themselves. That's coming in, for IoT devices through us. We don't know of anybody in the world doing what we're doing right now. There are multiple different kinds of devices and multiple different kinds of systems, but we feel that we've really cracked that code, and that'll be coming as we go forward.
Phenomenal. It sounds like you guys are working on a lot of really cool solutions to protect us all the way around. You know, as we do get ready to wrap up, Paul, what do you think are some other things, or what's your best advice for those of us out there that, like me, I mean, I don't know, right? I don't know. I anticipate, or I think that I'm covered when I'm really not. So what do you talk to the general person of what we should be doing, advice, things we didn't talk about here to try to make sure that we stay protected?
Yeah, so I think just awareness. So one of the things you're helping us with by this podcast is to get this word out, to be able to educate people that these are very critical issues in our world. Security is not just an afterthought. Security should be a forethought in creating devices and creating applications. And consumers and businesses alike should start to demand from IoT device and systems developers that they are completely secure right down to that small device level, not just starting at the router or the gateway, or not just starting upstream at the server, but right at that critical IoT device level. They should demand that, and businesses can have a huge hammer in this. Corporate boards of directors should be making this a critical issue of discussion around the table for all corporations, to ask how secure their IoT systems are. Have we secured them? Do we know that our data is protected? And devising plans to get that done. Here's a great statistic just to let you know how much of an afterthought this has been. The Santa Fe group out of Santa Fe, New Mexico, assesses corporate risk across several different areas. Recently did a study that showed that less than 25% of companies who are deploying IoT devices know how many devices they have on their system. That's, excuse me, that is a scary thought. That is a very scary statistic. You can't even keep track of how many devices. It's no wonder there's 20 billion devices in play now. That's more than all of the smartphones, laptops, servers, and cloud systems that are deployed in the world today combined. There are more IoT devices, and that's expected to go from 20 billion to 50 billion in the next 4 years. So just getting this word out, helping people understand what the critical issues are, helping them understand that you need to consider this right up front, and asking the questions and demanding that the systems developers, the manufacturers, the IoT suppliers have these in place, and that there is strong security at the device level, and that it's post-quantum in nature to survive going forward.
Paul, where can everybody go to learn more about you guys and what you do?
Our website is www.AgilePQ, that's AgilePQ, which stands for postquantum.com, AgilePQ.com.
Perfect. Thanks for coming on with us today, Paul.
Nice to be with you, Ty. Thanks for the time.
So everybody, just today I talked about insurance and why insurance is so important. And there's so many crazy things that we don't expect. And this is the kind of stuff that could put you out of business. It could do all kinds of things. I mean, Paul gave an example today of somebody that infiltrates somebody's home and speaking to their young little kids, right? I have kids. I think about this stuff all the time. And for the record, my friends in security have this, I mean, they scream about the threats that Paul is talking about here. This is very real. So to learn more about what you can do to protect yourself, make sure you go to AgilePQ.com. That's AgilePQ.com. I'll make sure that link is in the show resources page. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure you visit AgilePQ.com.